Welcome YouTube to another D&D Fridays. Today we'll be taking a look at a little thing called modules and homebrew systems when it comes to a D&D campaign. But before we get into that, don't forget, always hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and comment down below on maybe what you like about any particular system. But without further ado, let's get on into it. So when we think about homebrew campaigns versus modules, what's the first thing that comes to mind, really?
I guess for me, somebody sitting in a dark corner of their house trying to build out a world that they have no idea how to build versus picking a book off the shelf and opening up the first page and starting a new campaign.
Mm.
A little hyperbolic, of course, right? So,
Yeah, to me, I kind of think of something similar where like a homebrew campaign is kind of like a GM's own personal world per se. They kind of think up of at least most of what's going on in it. Where a module is pretty much like a Tome of Annihilation or like a Adventure League module or something of that nature. Where for the most part it's already created. Maybe there's some differences depending on how a GM runs it, but the story, the settings, all that stuff is really out there already.
yeah.
So
The second thing that comes to my mind when I think homebrew is actually Critical Role, because that whole thing started as Matt Mercer's homebrew for his friends, a home campaign where he was just thinking of plot lines and having his friends walk through them. And, it's went from a homebrew thing all the way into having an actual official module written, that's published by Wizards of the Coast. So,
yep, and now even an entire show on it,
yeah, yep, yep. So,
which is Machina for the uninitiated. It's
Legend.
on
Yep.
Amazon Prime and probably something else.
I think it's a Prime exclusive, but that's a little off the topic, right? Yeah. That's they get enough views.
Yeah, they have enough funding for press
Yeah.
and marketing.
Well deserved. Well deserved. I joke. So.
Yeah, but I don't really talk about which between homebrew and modules. What really stands out to maybe make you want to run or play in either one?
When it comes to modules, I think the draw for me is that you know a quick it's a quick 3 or 4 level campaign. It's very structured. You can kind of get in, do your thing, get out, um, and depending on how you're feeling, you might not want to undertake a month long or year long homebrew, or you're just getting started out, and so there's that structure there. So those are a couple of things that kind of draw me towards wanting to play a module. Um, for playing a homebrew, I think that's where you get the creativity that comes out, whether it's from the DM or the players. You get really exciting sessions. Crazy things happen. Not that crazy things can't happen in a module, but they're going to be more likely and more spontaneous when you're dealing with a homebrew, because everybody's just kind of winging it, right? There's not this set guide of these set rules that you have to follow or set paths. You kind of just can quote unquote make it up as you go. Um, Obviously, I'm not saying that there isn't preparation and all of that kind of stuff, but it's a little bit more, there's a little bit more freedom there, right? And so there's that opportunity to have that creativity be exploited.
Yeah, yeah. For me, I kind of enjoy homebrew campaigns much to the same. Um, there's there's not all that sense of I have to follow the module to some degree. There's a lot more creativity and fun to be had, at least to me, within homebrew campaigns. And from a GM point of view, I've, I'm pretty much in my third homebrew campaign right myself, and it gives me so much more freedom and flexibility to be able to say, all right, I know how I want the story, and I know that I'm pretty flexible session by session to adjust based on what my players do, because the age old D&D adage is so true. Players will do stuff from time to time that is totally unexpected, and I feel like it's easier to account for stuff like that in a homebrew campaign than as opposed to like a strict AL module or something like that.
Yeah, I think that rings very true. It is much easier to be flexible and adjust as necessary when something goes awry that you're not expecting.
Yeah.
Um,
And I feel like in a homebrew campaign, it's also a lot easier to adjust challenges for players too, because as players, they can have a whole range of power levels based on their style of playing, their character, stuff like that. So I feel like it's a lot easier to figure out. Okay, I think my players can handle this, even though the books say that this party should be able to handle this.
right, right.
As in modules, usually it's already detailed out to some level. Yeah, in this combat, you'll be facing off against two storm giants, let's say. But in a homebrew campaign, you might be able to, yeah, my players can handle five.
Right. And I mean, you can't. This goes without saying, I think, but you can obviously add homebrew spins to the modules as you want as you go. If you come up to a place where, to use your example, right, it says, "Hey, use there are two storm giants, but your party can or the group can handle four or five." I mean, there's nothing stopping you to kind of homebrew that specific scenario to up the difficulty a little bit. I think there's to your point, right? You've got to be a little bit more careful if you're going to want to follow the module from page 1 to page 45 or whatever, and to try and get from point A to point B, beginning to end. You got to be a little bit more careful when it comes to that, but you still have the flexibility to tweak little things here and there and homebrew a little bit here and there.
Yeah, yeah, that's a very good point. In mods, you still have that flexibility, um, but it's sometimes it can be a little bit more within the general line of what the or general spirit of the mod, I should say.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. But but on the mod side of things, the advantage to that really is you have the book right there, or the PDF, or whatever format it's in. So there's less prep that you have to do. I would say it's probably more just reading through the relevant points for the next session, two sessions, whatever, and figuring out is there anything that you may or may not need to tweak.
Right. Exactly. I think there's it takes off some of the mental burden on the DM and a lot of the preparation time, because you've got a lot of the answers sitting right there already in front of you, right? And I think running a module as a first time, second time DM makes a lot of sense, to kind of get your feet wet and start understanding exactly, how the game runs, how the players are going to react, how you're going to react, and just kind of walk through. Right, it's there to help you, to hold your hand a little bit before you take that headfirst deep dive into homebrewing your own sort of campaign or your own adventure.
Yeah, exactly. Um, one the one thing about mods though that a GM might have to be careful about, I would say, is especially in some of the more popular modules, whether it's Elemental Evil or Curse of Strahd or whatever, is the possibility for players already knowing everything there is to know about that module, whether they GM that mod before, played through that mod before, so I think that's something that can be a negative to mods is you really have to take that poll beforehand and figure out should you really run that mod? Should you talk to that player to not metagame any sort of knowledge, whatever it may be?
Yep. Yeah, that is definitely something you've got to be very cautious of. I think that's one of the reasons why Curse of Strahd is so popular, is because it can be different almost every single time that you play it, because of the variety of different choices and paths that can be laid out before you. There is still a structure to it. It still wants you to go from A to B to C to D, but I think there is that healthy mix between the two that you could potentially have. But overall, again, right, it's still a module that leads you down a specific path to get to the end game, right?
Yeah. And then I guess when it comes to homebrew campaigns on the other side, um, it can follow a wide variety of length and stuff. Like you could have a homebrew game for 3 months, 2 months.
That's true.
You could have it for 5, 10, 15 plus years. So I guess when it comes to that, that's also another type of talk to have with the group. Is I have this idea. Does this kind of jive well with everybody? Um, I guess in the beginning, this kind of would come up in the session zero type of thing. Is does the homebrew campaign sound fun, or do y'all prefer some sort of like mod? And if so, which one kind of fancies everybody's interest? And when I say everybody, I mean GM included.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, if you're with a new group, it probably makes a little bit of sense to start out with a mod because, in general, they're a little bit shorter in nature, and it lets everybody kind of get familiar with everybody's play style before you potentially deep dive into a longer setting or a more complex or unofficial setting. We'll label it that. Uh, and to your point, right? Homebrew, it can be short. It can be a one shot. It could be 15 years. There are campaigns out there that are still running, right? But it does add a lot of mental weight to the DM, having to prepare more, having to build out his world or her world, and having to think of not all of the scenarios because that's never going to be possible, but multiple scenarios that as you're planning out, right? What if they do A? What if they do B? What if so the mental gymnastics there are definitely going to be ramped up doing that kind of stuff. So that's the thing to consider also.
Yeah. Another thing that I would say to consider between homebrew and modules is mods tend to end sometime with between levels 5 and 10, give or take. Where homebrew modules can go for however the heck long y'all decide to make it.
Yep.
Yeah. So if you're the type of group that enjoys high level play, tier 3, tier 4, it's probably going to be easier to do that level of play in a homebrew campaign. And as a side note, I always vouch for a high level campaign because those tiers are so fun. And there's not a lot of them out there.
It is very true, and they play very differently than the lower level and even the mid level campaigns and characters. So, yeah, you gotta do that once in a while for sure. It makes total sense.
Yeah.
So from your perspective, then, Nakai, your favorite kind of campaign is 100% homebrew. Then,
Yep, that's my personal favorite type of campaign. Just for the ability to go off the rails at any given moment and being totally okay with it. How about you?
for me, I think I land a little bit in the middle. I like the idea of taking a module and having a world kind of already pre-built and characters and NPCs already pre-built and towns and you know events and actions and things that are kind of already pre-built, but then just taking the world, not necessarily doing the module and the campaign that's in the module, but taking that pre-built world and kind of adding your own sugar and spice into it and building it out from there. Because I think that gives you the best of both worlds. I think it allows for that creativity because you're not following, step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but you're also not having to put all of that time and energy into building out a world and thinking about all of the different complexities and nuances of trying to build out cities and landscape and cultures and you know that kind of stuff. It's already just kind of pre-built there. So I land a little bit in the middle.
So maybe your group is a part of a seafaring pirate ship that just landed off the coast of Chult and is going to raid and pillage the city of Omru on the continent of Chult.
There you go. Sure.
That's actually not a bad idea now I think about it.
Yeah. Now you're getting some ideas going, huh?
Yep. And then maybe after that campaign is over, your exploits have been noticed by the Red Wizards of Thay, and now you got to go to Barovia to steal some priceless artifacts from Strahd.
Yeah, exactly. I think that you're letting the creativity flow, but you're not having to build the whole entire world. So I think it works really well.
Yep. But at the same time, there's no reason why a group can't flip flop between mods and homebrew campaigns.
100%. Yep.
Yeah. There is a lot of them out there.
There is a lot of them. That is very true.
But on the flip side of the coin, I always say that no matter which way your group goes, I think both ways are definitely going to have some work cut out. Both mostly from the GM side, but a little bit from the player side too, just in terms of being that good player sort of thing.
Yeah, with everything that I've said, right? I'm not diminishing how much preparation you need to put, whether you're running a module or not. There's still always going to be prep work, and you got to be prepared to take on some of that either way. It just depends on how deep you want to go down that rabbit hole, right? You want to do a couple of hours of prep, or do you want to do tens to hundreds of hours of prep, right? So,
yep. I can say both definitely has their fun points to it, for sure.
yeah, both are fun, and you're going to get a good experience doing either one.
Yep. Any closing pointers?
No,
All right. Well, with that brings us to the end of homebrew campaigns versus modules. May everyone try at least one of each, so you get a good feel of what your preferences are. And until next time, keep y'all's lives geeky